Oh, hello there. Yes, 'tis was day. It's actually sort of quite nice and bright out there, which would be lovely. Yes, it was Holocaust Memorial Day recently, and rightly, social media and the press was full of events marking that. We're reaching a point at which there are very, very few survivors who are directly connected to that period, and as they disappear, so that tangible memory of the horrors of racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, and all the rest of it slowly sort of start to disintegrate. I've never thought I'd live long enough to see the time when there's a rising tide of fascism, which comes out with the same Nazi tropes, one might say. Which brings us neatly, perhaps, to the Israeli ambassador to the UK. Interview in the Daily Express today, saying that she finds the level of anti-Semitism in England very shocking. I'm not entirely sure I would necessarily particularly agree with her, but she was citing a recent demonstration against her at the London School of Economics. You can watch my video. There's a link to my video about that. Basically, people shouted at her, which apparently she found very shocking. The Israeli ambassador has a certain history, should we say, and I would argue that as a rule of thumb, if Melanie Phillips, who's quite a spokesperson for the Jewish community in the UK, thinks that you're a bit right-wing and extreme, then you probably are. But the British establishment has seemed to be bending over backwards. I'm straying into anti-Semitic territory here, perhaps deliberately, but has been seen recently to be bending over backwards. We had the very odd sight of Nadeem Swahili, the Education Secretary, suggesting that people that chant from the river to the sea should be reported to the police as though it was some sort of criminal offence. I'm not quite entirely sure how that would work. Think about that, okay? Because, like, for example, if you just do a quick look at on Amazon, there's From the Rivers to the Sea by John Sedgwick, which is about American railways. Perhaps you could just hold that at a demo. It would meet Priti Patel's Noise thing, wouldn't it? Or you could go home and listen to Big Big Train, From the River to the Sea, a widely respected album, but unfortunately has that title. I wonder if that's anti-Semitic music. And finally, you could read From the River to the Sea, which actually is about Palestine, a series of essays, but presumably we haven't quite got to the book-burning bit yet. And, which neatly leads us on to this idea of so many things being lumped into what exactly is anti-Semitic. David Miller at Bristol University from a few months ago was attacked for this very reason. The IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, unfortunately, one might say, is rather broad, and if it manages to trip up an anti-racist like Jeremy Corbyn, it probably is a bit too broad, isn't it? Yes. But one of the things recently that has come out of this has been the likening of any mention of Israeli power, be it soft or hard, as being an anti-Semitic trope. Oh, well, you're just equating Jewish people with, nefarious levels of power. And for me, over and over again, the problem I have with this is, therefore, how do we discuss Israel and or its actions and or its lobbying? Is it automatically anti-Semitic if we do that? Because if it is, then there's some serious problems around that definition. And I do notice, particularly, for example, with David Miller and others, that the usual, it's about free speech and just being able to say what you want brigade, Toby Young, are deathly silent on this one. Deathly silent. Which once again leads me to believe that perhaps a lot of these things are simply being used as a stick to beat people with. There. Wonder if they'll get me kicked out of the Labour Party. Maybe. Anyway, have a lovely weekend. I've got to work, unfortunately. Because let's face it, work is perhaps these days quite alienating, isn't it? Yeah, that's the sociology teacher in me. Anyway, have a lovely weekend. Probably post something for tomorrow. Don't know quite what yet. Maybe something involving my cat. Might be nice.